All right, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and start our review for the end of the year, and we're going to begin those with a video at the beginning of each, just to kind of give us some reminders about the couple chapters that we'll be covering for those days. These videos are not meant to give you, remind you how to do every single problem that we did in those chapters. It's possible that you might have to go back to your notes and look something up, or possibly Google something, right? If you don't remember what PEMDAS stands for, Google it, do a little research, investigate, and figure it out for yourself. So I'm going to take you through a couple of these problems. The first one being order of operations. So this will be a little bit of chapter 1 and chapter 2. The rest of these actually all focus on chapter 3 because there was a lot of little things to kind of remember there. So let's go ahead and get started, right? First one, order of operations. So if you remember, we're going to use PEMDAS. There we go. So we have parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division with a left to right arrow, and then addition, subtraction with a left to right arrow. Okay, remember that when you get to having multiply and divide on the same stage, you do them from left to right. Same thing with addition and subtraction. Let's see if we experience that in this problem. So the first thing I look at is, are there any parentheses? And there are. So inside, let's look again. Okay, the only thing to do in here is division, so we're going to divide within the parentheses first. So this would get us a answer. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Okay, I don't need to put parentheses around this anymore as it's the only number left. So we could just carry down our plus sign, 4 squared, and then 10 minus. Okay, cool. So looking here, we now have an exponent. So we're going to go ahead and do this. 4 squared is 16. I'm going to bring down my 10 minus 16 plus 8. Now here we have subtraction and addition. Okay, a lot of people think, oh, addition, right? Especially if they write out PEMDAS, the word, just from left to right. They see A comes before S. But remember, addition and subtraction are the same tier, which means when you have both of them and you're making the decision between the two, that you should do it from left to right. So even though addition comes first in PEMDAS, like the letters, we're going to subtract first. So we have 10 minus 16. And some people might be able to do that in their head. Some people might have to write it out on the side. And when I see this, oh, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and use keep, change, opposite, or the additive inverse. So that means to change this, we're going to change the subtraction to addition. So it's going to be keep the 10, change the minus to a plus, and the 16 to a negative 16. Okay, so again, this was keep, change, opposite. All right, so now this has the same value, but it is addition instead of subtraction. And we can think of it, all right, we have a positive plus a negative. That's kind of like that tug of war model we used. It's kind of like you have positives, which have a strength of 10, negatives that have a strength of 16. Oh, well, the negatives are going to win that, right? So our answer here is going to be negative, and we're going to say by how much, right? 16 is how much bigger than the 10? Well, we can do some simple subtraction. 16 minus 10, 6. So the negative's 1 by 6. So our answer here is negative 6. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's not our final answer. We have not carried down our last step. Okay, so our last bit is this plus 8 coming down. And from here we have the same thing. We have a negative plus a positive. This is already addition, so we don't have to do keep, change, opposite to change it. But we have a tug of war going on again. Positives have a strength of 8. Negatives have a strength of 6. The positives are going to win that one. And by how much? Well, we'll do some simple subtraction. 8 minus 6 is 2. So our answer here is a positive 2. Keep breaking my lead. It's a positive 2. Okay, let's make that thicker. That should be better. Okay, so that kind of did a little bit of chapter 1 and chapter 2. Chapter 1 was a little bit of order of operations. Chapter 2 being adding, different positives and negative numbers. All right, so let's go ahead and do a bit of a rapid fire now through chapter 3's reminders. Okay, first off, adding and subtracting decimals. So when we're adding and subtracting decimals, one thing that's important to remember is to line up our decimal. Okay, but first, before we even get there, because we have a negative, we have to do the same thing we were just doing. So we have a negative plus a positive. So I'm thinking tug of war. Okay, my negatives have a strength of 3. Let's just go with the 3 for right now, negative 3. And a positives have a strength of 8. So the positives are stronger. So my answer here, I'm going to write down already, is going to be positive, just as a reminder. Now, by how much? Well, we're going to do that subtraction again. So I'm going to do 8.38 minus 3.5. This is going to help us to get our answer. So take note that when you are adding and subtracting, you are lining up the decimals. And if there's any blank spaces, you're going to throw in a 0 there. So now we're going to do 8 minus 0, which is 8. 3 minus 5 we can't do. So we're going to borrow one from here. And this is going to hit 13. 13 minus 5 is 8 as well. Bring our decimal down. And 7 minus 3 is 4. So our answer here is a positive 4.88 or 4 88/100ths. Okay, and you can kind of see that, right? This is about 4. This is about 8. So negative 4 plus 8 will get us about, positive 4. Clearly, it goes up a little bit higher. So there you go. There's our next one. Let's see here. Let's take a look at multiplying decimals. Okay, so in multiplying decimals, we do not have to line up our decimal like we did in adding and subtracting. So we have 47 times 0.3. I'm just going to write 0.3. Okay, so we're going to just carry out just like normal multiplication. We'll worry about our decimal after. 3 times 7, 21. 4 times 3, 12 plus 2 is 14. Now, based on how many different decimal values we have, in this case we only have one because there's none up here. The decimal's here. There's nothing after it. So we only have one little scoop to make. So our decimal starts here and it scoops over 1. So we end up with 14 and 1/10, or 14.1. Okay, that's our answer there. On to dividing decimals. Okay, it is important that our divisor, okay, is a whole number when we divide. So I'm going to go ahead and write it inside our house first. We have 0.3 going into 20. Into 20. Now we have to make sure that this is a whole number, so we're going to scoot that decimal place over. Multiplying by 10, we can't just do it here, we also have to do it here. Okay, so that decimal scoots over. Because there was nothing left here, we're going to write a 0. And the decimal is going to scoot up in our quotient. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. 3 going into 200 now with our decimal right here. I'm going to not finish this one for the sake of speed through our video, but just going to remind you, we're going to divide this just as normal, okay? But making sure that if by the time we get to this 0, okay, we have not finished with our division, it hasn't come out to a clean final answer, we're going to go ahead and add a 0 here and keep on going, okay? Adding decimal digits here after the decimal value, and then we'll keep going. All right, from here, we have 2 left. Okay, we have adding and subtracting fractions as well as dividing and multiplying fractions. So for adding and subtracting, it is important that we have common denominators. Okay, if we don't have common denominators, let's just say this was a 6, we'd be multiplying the top and the bottom here by 2's to make this 3 into a 6 as well. But in this case, they already have common denominators. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a little Tetris piece. And what that Tetris piece is meant to do is get all of your numerators and your signs. Okay, so in this case, we got the negative sign and the plus sign involved in there. We already know that our denominator is going to be 3. Okay, it had a common denominator. So we're going to do negative 4 plus 2. Well, that's just like before. Negative 4 plus 2. We have a positive plus a negative. The negatives are stronger by how much? Oh, by 2. Okay, so we end up with a negative 2, and that gets us negative 2/3. Always check to make sure you simplify this, right? If they could both be divided by the same thing. In this case, negative 2/3 is good. All right, last one in our rapid fire round is when you're dividing and multiplying with fractions. So first off, if you have a whole number, we're going to go ahead and write that over 1. Okay, that's how you write a whole number as a fraction. Next, if we're dividing, we want to use the multiplicative inverse. Okay, keep, change, flip to make sure that we get it to multiplication because it's a lot easier to comprehend. So keep, change to multiplication, and flip this fraction. So it's going to become 1/5. And from here, when it's multiplication, so we couldn't do it here, so we shouldn't have even looked for it. But here, if we can cross cancel, we're allowed to do that. Now you don't have to, but it does make problems a lot easier sometimes. So 1 and 3, 1's already fully simplified, but a 10 and a 5 can both be divided by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, 10 divided by 5 is 2. So we now are just going to multiply across our numerators and across our denominators. So 2 times 1 is 2, and 3 times 1 is 3. And we are left with 2/3. There we go. So those are some simple reminders to help you with our review packet today, and then on to the mini quiz at the end. Hope this helps you, but again, remember you can always ask questions, you can always Google something, look something up even while you're in distance learning, and that should be able to help you get started.